sensation after a damning report yesterday branded the late DJ and TV presenter as one of Britain's most prolific sex offenders. But who will they be claiming from, and how would they go about it? Well, joining us here in the studio is child abuse lawyer from Bolton, Burden, Kemp, David McClenaghan. David, thank you for coming in. Presumably that actually there are lots of victims, because we know there are hundreds, who haven't contacted lawyers. Many feel they might not be able to afford one.
Well, the starting point is to say that all victims should seek advice from solicitors who specialise in this area of law. There's a handful of firms across the country that would be absolutely happy to speak to any of the victims. And the starting point is that it shouldn't cost them any money at all, so it should be completely accessible. And really they should do some research online, see who does this area of work, pick up the telephone and speak to a lawyer and get the advice to start things running.
David, Jimmy Savile is dead, so where does a victim seek compensation? What are the next avenues you pursue?
Okay, so generally there are three options for a victim of abuse. Firstly, and this is something that all victims should be doing, they should be making an application, perhaps with the assistance of a solicitor, to the Criminal Injuries Compensation Authority. And this is a government-funded scheme that's set up to pay compensation to victims of crime. There's no charge or cost to do it, so that's the starting point. Beyond that, yes, a victim can sue the person that committed the acts of abuse directly, but of course in the Savile case he's deceased.
But his estate is there.
His estate is there, but that is a difficult avenue to pursue. And my instinct and recommendation would be that victims should look towards an institution that employed him or that he was retained by or linked to. The situation is that an organisation can be held vicariously liable for the acts of an employee or a person that they've retained, and really that's a viable option.
How difficult, though, is it, David, to prove that an institution is at fault?
Well, we don't actually need to prove that they were at fault. Okay. It is possible to show that they were negligent and that something that they have done or failed to do allowed a person to be abused, and in that situation that would be a negligence claim. But the second option and the more common and easier option is to show that the position that the abuser had within the organisation afforded him the opportunity to commit the acts of abuse, and that is enough generally to hold that institution responsible and require them to pay much needed compensation to the victims.
You say much needed, and you've obviously worked extensively in this field. How important is compensation to a victim? I mean, recognition of the abuse that they've suffered for some will suffice. In usual cases, a criminal inquiry and a sentence would be enough. Is compensation important?
I think even today there is a scepticism amongst the public that whenever somebody talks about suing for money or compensation, people naturally, instinctively are sceptical about it. And we need to realise that childhood sexual abuse has an incredibly profound and pervasive effect across people's lives. There's huge impact on people's ability to form relationships and to perform in education, to sustain careers, and people need a helping hand really to get their lives back on track. And the notion behind compensation is that it's supposed to put the victim back in the position they would have been had they not been abused. So it gives them access to much needed medical treatment. It repays them for any financial expenses that they have incurred if they've already paid out for medical treatment. It perhaps compensates them for a loss of education or loss of career. So it's not something, in my view, to be sceptical about, and it's something that I feel that victims should at least consider exploring.
David, thank you very much for talking to us. Very interesting.